Good morning, Gen Con attendees. You are at the ABCs of Pathfinder Characterbuilding panel this morning. We are going to be making a Pathfinder 2nd edition character and kind of getting some ideas from you in chat on how to build it and making it live right here. So first we're going to go through some introductions. Let's start with James Case.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. I'm James Case. I am the organized play developer at Paizo. So I work in organized play, helping to put together the scenarios for Pathfinder Society and Starfinder Society.
Ianara.
Hello everyone, I'm Ianar Natividad. I'm an editor at Paizo, and well, I look at everything that goes through before it reaches public. That's what I do.
Patrick.
Hi, everyone. I'm Patrick Hurley. I'm also an editor at Paizo, and when I'm not in the office, I'm a science fiction fantasy writer.
And I'm Logan Bonner. I am the Pathfinder lead designer, which means that I do a whole bunch of work on the kind of main rules books for the game and kind of keep track of general rules issues throughout Pathfinder 2nd edition as a whole. So let's talk very briefly about Pathfinder 2nd edition, just to give folks who aren't familiar with it an idea of what it is. Pathfinder 2nd edition is a tabletop fantasy role-playing game of heroes going on adventures, fighting monsters, befriending other people, going through challenges, getting great rewards, saving the world, all that kind of good stuff. The 2nd edition launched last year at Gen Con, so this is its 1 year, its first birthday, we could say. And the game has been completely rebuilt from the ground up. If you're familiar with 1st edition, to play faster, to be more cohesive, to introduce a lot of new kind of ways of approaching things, character building options, and all that sort of stuff. If we could get the first slide, please. I'm going to briefly mention kind of the different ways that you can approach Pathfinder 2nd edition. The book that is out now, if you want to play the game and make a character, is the Pathfinder Core Rulebook. Because this is out already, these are the rules we're going to be using for this panel. In November, if you want a kind of different on-ramp into the game, we're going to be releasing a beginner box that is great for brand new players. It's a great gift. It's using the same rules engine. So if you make a character using the beginner box, you can use that character and continue to level it up and play more in the standard game. But it kind of streamlines some of the choices, kind of simplifies the options a little bit, so that you can make characters quicker, that it works for longer age ranges and that sort of thing. The box includes a whole bunch of materials like pre-generated characters, rules reference cards, battle maps, cardboard pawns, a set of dice, all that kind of stuff, so you can just grab the box and play. So we really have two options, come November, we'll have two options. And so kind of depending how deep into the game you want to get and your level of experience, one of those is going to work better for you than the other. So if we can get the second slide, the next slide, please. This is of a iconic characters, Kyra. So this is kind of, that shows you a little bit of what a character like that has all the rules you need to play a first level character. I'm just kind of giving up here so you kind of understand what we're working towards as we build this character. So folks, my other panelists, what are some of the things that you're excited about for this beginner box before we start getting into pulling people on making this character?
I really like how it, like one of the things that I really like about Pathfinder generally is that there are a ton of options for you. You can kind of build whatever you want, but I definitely know that sometimes I look at it and I'm just like, oh God, I want to do everything. And that can be a little overwhelming. So one of the things about the beginner box that's really cool is it just kind of slims it down to some like basic archetypes. You know, this is like your fighter and you hit things with your weapons, or this is your cleric and you do a lot of like divine magic. And so that's like a really good sort of on-ramp. You know, you do that, it gives you a really good introduction, and then from there you get a little more confident, and then you can really just go hard making whatever you want. So it ramps up very nicely, I think.
I really like how this beginner box is done. I feel as though when you're new to a game particularly, it can be overwhelming to parse through everything. But the box really just lays it out for you. You can go step 1, step 2, step 3, and everything is labeled, as you can see on this wonderful character sheet. So the rest of the box for players is especially, I think it's just as accessible in that regard.
I absolutely agree. It's very accessible, and also it comes with its own sort of adventures to get started. And I think the story of those beginner box adventure is just a lot of fun. It's a cool place to wander through. It's a cool dungeon to wander through, and yeah, it's a great starter adventure.
Yeah, it includes both an adventure that will kind of has a few training wheels on it for a new game master to kind of run through the game and kind of approaches things in a certain order and kind of trains you how to run the game as you're running it, which is really great. There's also a solo adventure in the player book, so if you kind of want to do a little bit of a storyline to get a feel for what the game is like, that's in there. All right, so I think we are getting ready to start the process. So let's go to next slide. This is going to be your ancestry. Character creation in Pathfinder 2nd Edition follows an ABC process. That is ancestry, background, and class. And this is kind of the story of your character up to the point where you start the game. You're born and you have your ancestry. You do kind of your early life, which is your background before you start adventuring, and then you start adventuring, and that's where you get your class. And those are the three main things we're going to be picking via straw polls as we go through this character creation process. You can see this is an image from the dwarf, the elf, and the human. We are going to kind of use the beginner box options to kind of give you a basic feel for that, even though we're using the core rulebook rules to create the character. So this process won't be exactly like using the beginner box. There are kind of a few more steps that are kind of condensed in the beginner box, but you'll get an idea of what's in there. So if we can start that straw poll. It looks like it's already up there. Go to the poll in the Gen Con main stage chat, and you can vote on which of these three ancestries our character is going to be out of. So let's talk a brief bit while this poll's running about these ancestries. They're kind of classic fantasy ancestries, but the Pathfinder setting of Golarion has some unique elements to them. Does anybody want to talk about the dwarf a little bit?
Okay. Logan, why don't you take dwarf?
Okay, I'll take the dwarf. So the dwarves are, they have a lot in common with kind of classic fantasy dwarves. They're, a little shorter in stature. They love crafting things, and they're kind of traditionalists. They also have this. There's a fair number of them on the surface world. Some settings vary on how many of them are like all underground versus up on the surface. There are quite a few in the surface world in our setting. The image you can see there is the ranger, the iconic ranger for Pathfinder. That's Harsk. He loves doing ranger stuff. He loves tea, and he has a badger animal companion named Biter, if I remember correctly. All right, does anybody want to talk about elves?
They're space aliens, yeah. No, elves are kind of cool in the setting because they're not actually native to Golarion. They kind of portaled in at some point in the deep past, and so they have this kind of cool tension of, still being. They have a lot of the classic hallmarks. They're very long lived. Some of their options are like, well, they're very long lived, and they tend to hang around a lot of these shorter lived people. But there's still a lot of there's a lot of different types of elves based on sort of where they've lived, and they all have very unique cultures, which I really like.
And then finally, we have the human, which is a big category. Golarion is a kind of a human-centric world. So if Inar or Patrick, do you have any kind of favorite human cultures in the setting?
in the setting, right? Not in
Yes.
Yes.
Gosh, I mean, I actually think what Paizo does with humans is pretty cool, in terms of like they're still fun to play. They're not the they're not the boring option. There's a lot of different things you can do to make your human customizable. I think if I were to play a human in Pathfinder 2e, it would be a human from Absalon, just because it's like growing up in fantasy New York City, and yeah, it'd be awesome.
Oh man. I've had to like look through a lot of lore because of what I do. So when I think of human, for whatever reason, I think of like one Absalom. Patrick took that from me. It's just great. But the other would probably be either a human from Galt or Ustalov. Galt especially because the final blades is just a really cool concept, and I'd love to see how I'd survive in that area.
Yeah, Galt
Particularly
is
as an
kind of the-
adventurer. Not like me,
Galt-
because I would not survive in that area. But if I was an
Yeah.
adventurer,
Yeah,
it would
Galt
be
is
fun.
kind of like the land of eternal revolution, political revolution, and Usulov is kind of like the goth, like
Gothic horror kind of your.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it's like
It's,
where Tim Burton would live.
Yes, I like
in
paying
there.
for my adventures. If you don't get that, if you don't get the hint.
Yeah. All right. It looks like we've got a winner on the poll. The
Ooh.
elf has won.
Very close though.
Yeah. So we are going to be making an elf. We're going to be making this character using a digital tool called Hero Lab Online. James is taking care of that. So he's going to plug in kind of the basics of these as we go through this. And then just like with character creation in the normal game, after we've got those basics in, we can always go in and fill back in whatever else we need to later on. And we'll get some suggestions from folks to do that part of the character process. All right. So can we get the next slide? The next slide is going to be backgrounds. As I said, this is kind of the second step of the ABCs, where you're kind of saying like, what did you do before you became an adventurer? And we've got 4 backgrounds here: the farmhand, the gambler, the scholar, and the warrior. And we're going to do another poll for those. Looks like that's going in the Gen Con main stage chat. So the backgrounds usually give you kind of all of these options are going to adjust your ability scores some. So the backgrounds are going to be doing that. And they're also going to give you something you know a lot about, which is your lore skill. And they're going to give you a special ability. So what are some interesting combinations here? Because we know we have an elf farmhand, elf gambler, elf scholar, or elf warrior kind of all have some implications. Does that kind of inspire any character ideas in folks' brains here?
Well, I think that the elf scholar is the kind of classic one, and therefore I want to think about what an elf gambler is going to be.
Yes.
I think if you have, imagine, people who get really good at counting cards, and then they can kind of play the odds at gambling. What if you had multiple human lifetimes to just predict just memorize all the chances?
And I kind of want to know what would drive an elf with this long lifespan. I decided it's time for some.
I love it.
Maybe it's a hobby,
Oh yeah.
But for them, it's like this is just a standard hobby, because for their lifetime is like.
Yeah, that's enough for me.
For them,
Look
time is so adjusted for elves that real farming is like Farmville for them. That's just.
Yeah, and you could always become a spellcaster so that you can create water. That's like your main drive. Gotta get back to the farming.
Oh man.
An elf
I
warrior.
do love that concept though, where you just become
Yeah.
a spellcaster because you need it for your job. There's no real ambition to it. You just want to do well in whatever you're doing.
The elf warrior is also interesting. One of the spots in Golarion is kind of demon infested, so a lot of the elf warriors are kind of trained in demon slaying. Tactics. That's even an. I think we beginner. It's the kind of like span you're playing. You can become, demon hunters.
Turns out most level 1 characters don't go up against huge demons. So
At level
Imp hunters, and then you get bumped up.
We're also. I'm seeing some questions in the chat. We'll get to the end of this after we've made the character. If we have time, we'll do a little bit of Q&A as well. So if you have some questions, just save them for then. If you have character ideas, drop those in chat at any point, because we love to kind of use weird ideas that we find in there. All right.
How's the poll doing, Logan?
Good question. I don't have it open.
I think Gambler is winning by a lot.
I mean, you'd probably be able to, after 1,000 years, read people's tells pretty well if you're
Also that, yeah.
Gambler is doing quite well, yes.
I don't think it's gonna get dethroned anytime soon.
I don't think so. I think Gambler at this point.
Let's add it in then.
All right. So we've got an elf gambler, which implies a fair amount about their attitude. We'll see whether we want to go with that or subvert that. All right. Can we get the next slide, please? Because the last step of ABCs is going to be your class. There are 4 classes in the beginner box, so we're kind of going for that breakdown. There are more choices of all these things, ancestries, backgrounds, and classes in the core rulebook, but there are too many for a poll anyway. So we kind of narrowed it down to the beginner box classes. So those are going to be 4 classics: the cleric, the fighter, the rogue, and the wizard. And there you can make for making a powerful character, but we're kind of that's not really our aim with this panel. Our aim is to kind of create a fun character and have a kind of Sunday morning party here, or Sunday afternoon, for depending on your time zone, I guess. We're not going to be like, oh well, you really want an int boost from the elf to go with. We're just kind of whichever one we think is going to be the fun character is going to win out here. So that poll is going to choose the class. So please go vote on the. Who wants to talk a little bit about what the cleric class is all about?
So Claire, they are your priest class. And you can kind of choose. First of all, there's a ton of deities that you can play. Some like the iconic cleric up there, Kyra, worships Serenray, that's the goddess of healing and also and the sun. Really cool. There are also other clerics, or there are also other deities that focus on other things such as agriculture or law.
Mic there, just make sure it's
I
more
can't
away
stop
from your face.
breathing. So
I mean, we will fix that, but still.
Wait a second.
All right. So,
Regardless
Thank
of,
you,
let's go
man.
and get this set
All
up.
this
right,
problem will
so-
be solved.
all right.
Is
So
that
I
better?
think we're back.
Oh.
There you go. Enjoy, everybody.
All right. Okay, so people can hear us. That's good. Fortunately, while people couldn't hear us, they could at least vote on a poll. So we do have the character that we're making. If we can get the last slide of the cleric image, we can put that up. So we are making a cleric. We have Hero Lab running. And if you want to show them that, they can follow along as we make this character. So we've slotted in the elf ancestry, the gambler background, and the cleric class. And there are a few choices to make with each of those sections. And we'll please give us some ideas in chat, and we'll kind of do some back and forth to determine a little more about this character. So we've already kind of established that, over a long lifespan, you can learn to count cards or learn how to read people. Kind of depending on how scrupulous you are is going to determine which of those you like the best. And to determine that scrupulosity, maybe chat wants to shout some alignment suggestions at us. That might give us an idea of kind of where this character wants to go.
Well, I mean, if we're playing a cleric, should we figure out what their deity is? Because I think Brown doesn't smile so much on certain alignments.
So James, how about you curate a few options for us? Because we don't want to go through all the deities, but pick a few that you think have some clear potential here. Some folks are yelling out chaotic neutral, chaotic good, true neutral. A lot of chaotic neutrals here.
A lot of chaos.
Yes.
Well, the one we covered before was Sarenrae. That's always a good choice. Pharasma is another deity that's really big. She's the Lady of Graves and prophecy, and she sort of allocates souls to where they go when they die.
Desna got called out a few times in chat.
Desna's a goddess of freedom and travel, and I could certainly see how those things might be useful to a gambler.
Caden Kalian also got called out quite a few times in chat.
Yes, yeah.
You have to respect a hero who accidentally ascends to godhood during a night of heavy drinking. So.
The bro god.
Yeah. So, what is our panel feeling here? What are people shouting out in chat?
People are primarily shouting Caden and Desna. So those seem to be kind of, I think they were talking about it some while we were doing technical difficulties as well.
Got it.
Is Desna a goddess of luck? Because that could.
Yeah, work. that could help out a lot. Yeah, let's go with Desna. Then we'll have
goddess of luck, dreams, stars, and travelers. So let's add that in.
And hey, the elves love the stars,
They very much do.
Back home.
Okay. So for Desna, our followers can be chaotic good, chaotic neutral, or neutral good. So, what is chaos, Logan? For those people who may not be familiar with kind of the standard alignments and all that.
Oh, sure. So chaos is kind of explained by saying lawful is kind of the one where you either obey existing laws or follow a very strict code of rules. Chaos is a lot more kind of adaptable. It varies a lot depending on what your other kind of alignment axis is. Chaotic good is very different from chaotic evil in how they approach things. Chaotic good tends to be kind of like searching for freedom and extolling those virtues, and not being kind of overly judgmental or overly set in their ways.
Yeah. Sounds good. So let's bring up our alignment then.
All right.
Anything stand out?
There looks like chaotic good is probably slightly ahead. So let's go with chaotic good.
Cool. There we go.
Chaotic neutral gave it a real run for its money though. So that kind of implies that maybe, when they win at gambling, maybe they're using that money for something good, or taking money from bad people when they can.
Yeah,
I'm sure there's a little bit of gambling for gambling's sake. But, all right, so we've got that alignment in there. What decisions do we still need to make for our ancestry?
Well, the big one here is your heritage.
Yeah. So when you choose your ancestry, you have both a heritage and an ancestry feat. In the beginner box, those are kind of condensed into one choice. You kind of get both as a package, but we're going to be picking those individually. So you can kind of see the rundown here. James, can you recap those options?
So we have Ancient Elf, where you've lived a very long time. You have the Arctic Elf, where you come from the frozen north. Actually, let's keep it to the core ones for this, because Hero Lab pulls in everything from all of our sources. So there's a lot of new ones there too. Cavern Elf is you come from deep underground, you get dark vision. Desert Elf brings you from the desert and gives you fire resistance. Seer Elf is kind of your more magic one. You get detect magic at will, and you get some magical skills. Whisper Elf means that your ears are very long and very sensitive, so you can hear very well with that. And Woodland Elf has you being adapted to living in the forest or jungle and gives you some abilities to climb and that sort of thing.
Looks like chat says Seer Elf.
Yep.
Seer Elf. That's
People
actually
love-
great.
It's not literally, you can't see through cards though, right? I mean,
No, but you can find out whether the deck is magical, so you can figure out if someone's trying to cheat that way.
Okay, let's add it.
All right.
And then our last thing there is our Ancestry Feeds.
Right. And Ancestry Feats you can get more of as you level up. So we're only making a first level character, but it does mean that your Ancestry in Pathfinder 2nd Edition does continue to matter, and you can kind of build on it as you go up in level. All right. So let's just look at a few of these. There's stuff like Elven Weapon Familiarity, if you want to be good with the weapons that are kind of classic elf weapons. There's Elven Lore, if you want to kind of know a bunch about elf things and be good at some of like the skills that elves are good at. Nimble Elf lets you move faster. So, you know, if you've won at the gambling table and somebody takes umbrage at that, you can get away. And then there's Forlorn is kind of a setting specific thing for Galarian, which is the Forlorn are kind of people who've seen a lot of shorter lived people die over their lifetime. And so their kind of emotions are a bit diminished by that kind of long history.
I think that's pretty setting specific, but I think it's also a pretty classic. It's like a nice take on a pretty classically elf concept. So,
all right. So if chat wants to take some shots at what feats we might pick, that's going to tell us a little more about this character. And then once we get through that, we'll kind of go through the background and kind of say, the background is pretty straightforward. It's going to tell you everything that you get. All these, like I said, are going to give you some boost to your ability scores, kind of your strength, your dexterity, your constitution, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma, kind of your basic abilities. We're going to do all that at once in one step down the road here a little bit. Looks like there's a linguistics. I'm not sure which one linguistics is referring to.
Ancestral Linguistics.
I think it's one of
I see.
the new ones from the APG actually. So it's only been out about a couple days, but it's the one where, because you're very old, you just remember that I used to know how to speak Gnomish, and I know how to speak Gnomish today because I've thought back on it.
It looks like Nimble has the edge, so let's go with that one. So this is Nimble, is good in a lot of situations, lets you travel around faster. So let's head to the background and kind of see what you get from that. So as you can see, this kind of shows you the path of your character, and you can come up with more character building ideas as you play through. Usually when you make a character, you have at least a basic concept in your head and go from that. And that's kind of advise people to do it. That process is pretty different ways. Get for being a gambler.
You get a gambler, you get first of all, you get some bonuses, you'll get some lore, but you also get a skill feat, and this most of your backgrounds will give you a skill feat, and the one you get here is called Lie to Me. So when somebody is trying to lie to you, your ability to lie protects you from other people's sort of misdirection. So you use your deception. So it's just basically.
Right.
And then it of course gives you our boost, but we can do that at the end.
All right, should we move on to the class
Let's
and
do
make our
that.
selections there? The class is going to batch of selections of any of the most are going to have the biggest impact. So what are our
The first one we have is something unique to Cleric doctrine. So that's either Cloistered Cleric or War Priest. And it doesn't cause a huge change. You're still very much a Cleric either way, but the Cloistered Cleric is a little bit more you maybe stayed in the monastery and studied and learned magic. And the War Priest is exactly what it says on the tin.
Yeah.
With oftentimes, and you kill undead or whatever it is. So feeling a little more magic, or are we feeling a little more magic martial?
All right, chat, Cloistered or War Priest Cleric. We've got one vote for Cloistered so far, one vote for War Priest, so it's neck and neck. Yeah,
Oh,
it's
War Priest is
two
still
more
ahead.
votes, one for each. Yeah. Yeah, these are going to kind of affect the amount of spellcasting you have versus kind of the amount of martial ability you have. It's staying really tight, but it looks like War Priest is a little ahead. So let's go ahead and go with War Priest, and then move on to the next selection. So the War Priest is going to be able to block with their shield. They're going to get a kind of better defensives, better weapon abilities.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Then there are some spells to pick.
Right.
ooh.
As a cleric, you automatically get a bunch of either heal spells or harm spells that you can use to heal your allies or harm other people. So those are kind of going to be automatic. You're going to get a certain number of those every day, no matter what. You can also prepare more heals or harms if you want to, but you're going to get quite a few every day anyway.
So
All right.
there are kind of a lot of spells, so maybe
Yeah.
we want to just call some out or that sort of thing.
Yeah, let's just go through that. Let's do the cantrips first. I'm going to say message, so you can kind of send a mental message to somebody.
Yeah. I can see you casting this to secretly pass messages around a gambling table. So.
Yeah, don't raise.
All right, Ianara and Patrick, if you just want to call out some spells, go for it.
Read Aura seems flavorful.
Yeah.
Oh,
Want to
yeah.
know who you're
And
going
you
to be at
already
the gambling
have,
table with?
Yeah, and you can combine that with detect magic, which you already have from being. So that's what we're going to be choosing for the first level spells. Spells also scale up and can get more powerful as they're heightened. Cantrips scale up automatically. So if you get an attack cantrip, its damage is going to go up throughout your adventuring career. And the other spells you have to prepare in a higher slot to get an extra benefit out of them. So there are quite a few first level spells for the cleric. What are some thoughts from the panel on which ones might be good?
And keeping in mind that you don't necessarily need to prepare a lot of heal spells, because just as a cleric, you just get them. So
Yep.
that's
For
nice.
being a good cleric.
Yeah,
being
I
a
was
good
about to
cleric,
say,
yeah.
I know what if I were an evil cleric, I'd know what I'd pick.
There's a couple of good or evil deities that maybe will give you not the spell that you're expecting.
That's
which
true.
is
Whether
a
you
nice
get heal
little-
or harm depends entirely on your deity. So if you're following a evil deity who just really likes healing horrible monsters, you might get heal regardless of their alignment.
Hmm.
Or getting a suggestion for ventriloquism and command, I think are
Somebody's
Two
really
good ones.
leaning into that.
tricksy
gambler.
ventriloquism.
Yeah.
I raised 50. What? Okay.
Let's look at command. I think that's a pretty classic one. So in command, you shout something to the target. You can make them run away or drop what they're holding, or just kind of freeze in place for a little bit. So that's a fun option. So let's add that one. And we have one more.
All right.
And,
Yeah, we're seeing a fair amount for ventriloquism, which will let you, make a sound of jingling coins from over there, which is not the direction you're actually running. If you need
Yeah.
to.
I do like that as it levels up, this one, a lot of spells can gain bigger effects as they get higher level, and this one kind of as it gets higher level, the sort of things you can ventriloquism get a little more complex. That's good fun. So there we go.
And-
That's all of our spells in.
Yeah, and as you can see, like clerics, depending on your deity choice and your spell choice, you can do a lot of different concepts to them. They aren't kind of too locked into a narrow thing. So you can make a gambler cleric and still have it make sense.
Yeah.
All right, so let's go to the. I think that's all the selections for the class.
Yeah.
Is that correct, James?
Those are all of our main class selections.
Right.
So
So let's go to the ability scores.
Yeah. So let's see what we have here.
You can see on here how many choices we have remaining. So as you choose your ancestry background and class, certain choices will be automatic, and then there are ones you can choose what you boost up. So for example, for being an elf, you automatically got a boost to your dexterity and to your intelligence. And you took a flaw to your constitution,
Yes.
which reduced that. And then you also get to choose one for your ancestry. Looking at kind of this gambler, what do we think would be good ability scores for the type of things gamblers need to do?
Charisma.
Yep.
Lots
Charisma?
of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of that's how you bluff, so that's a good choice.
Okay.
And
So
the nice thing is, as a cleric, the charisma is also going to determine how many extra heal spells you get. So that's also very useful.
So we'll put that in here. It is important to note that the classes have a key ability. For the cleric, that's wisdom. So we've already gotten an extra wisdom. And it is also important to note that we are not trying to necessarily make a quote unquote optimized character.
And there are also ways, the cleric who has high charisma and not a great wisdom can also still do quite a bit of spell selection that will avoid them having to use their wisdom as often, because it's primarily for your spell DC. So depending on your spell choice, you can kind of work around that a little bit.
Well, to be fair, wisdom does play into perception, and that might help with reading other people, which
That's
is
true.
very valuable for a gambler.
And it makes
So
it harder to intimidate you and all kinds of
so
stuff
that brings
you're
us to
gonna want.
background. In background, we first have a choice between Dex and Charisma. So I think between the two of them, we're deciding on the Charisma one, and then we get one other that can go into any of the other ability scores. So Ianara, what are you thinking on that?
I think this time we should put a little bit more into wisdom, so that we
Little
have
bit.
that
Yeah.
reading going for us.
And then the last thing you get is you just get 4 boosts at the end. So
And those 4 can go anywhere you want as long as you don't pick the same thing more than once.
yeah, so let's do 1 in wisdom. And then Patrick.
Well, I would say 1 for intelligence, just because if you gamble and are a cleric and a seer, or what, I can't remember. Do we do seer?
Yeah.
Yeah, that just seems to make sense.
Okay. And then we can lean in a bit more into charisma. And Ianara, why don't you give us our last one?
If we're gonna be running, I think a little bit of con wouldn't hurt.
Not a negative.
Okay. Sweet.
Some hit points.
So we have all of our abilities in. So.
Yep. Right. And then skills are different, things you're good at. You automatically.
What else do we have for this character?
We have there's some stuff we're probably gonna not go into super in depth, like equipment and that sort of thing. Are you getting any other flags that are saying you still need to do this?
Yeah, Hero Lab tells you. We just get 2 languages other than Common and Elven, so we can pop those in, I suppose.
All right.
So our options here are Draconic, Gnomish, Goblin, Orcish, and Sylvan.
I would say, you're going to want to have a language of whoever is going to be the best people to gamble with. So, because they're pretty big risk takers, probably easy to fool all the time, but also don't money. That's you're playing the small stakes tables.
Okay. So I've just added Goblin, and we get 1 more. What if who you gamble with is not just the goblins, but it's also powerful dragons. You want to eventually, maybe you best a
Get that
dragon in a
whole
game of
horde.
dice and take their horde.
Yeah.
I don't think you're
Okay.
gambling with just money at that point. Let's be fair.
But it adds to the
Not-
thrill, Ianara.
Not gracious
That is fair.
losers.
That is fair.
Not the most
Okay.
sportsmanlike, the dragons.
So that's all of our things. Hero Lab will tell us when we haven't made choices, and we've made all of our things there. So we can go up to
Chat, start shooting those names at us, because that's the one thing we still don't have. So give us some good elf gambler names. Start those coming. I think we've got a little bit of time left, so we'll do some Q&A. And go from there. Thanks for sticking with us with the oldies. Hopefully you heard at least a few things that we said. James was with me on the previous character building panel where we named a character Dr. Yes. So someone has suggested Dr. No in the chat. We've got Slevin B. Jenner Box Character. That's
Wow.
that's certainly powerful.
that's the one I had in
Yes.
as the
All right. Would you like me to spell it for
Puniful.
you? It's
Sure.
B period GYNNER.
Oh, I see the energy we're going for here.
Yes.
Yes.
Perhaps this didn't come across in when spoken. And now the surname BOCKS hyphen
Yep.
KARRAKTUR.
The
I could
venerable
defi-
box
There
character.
I think that's a winner.
Elves.
Is it weird to say that I could hear the hyphen when you said it?
Yes. It's so great. That's awesome.
So here we go. We're up,
All right.
and as you can see it, now we have kind of all of our stats in one place. It's really easy. You have your hit points as a lovely little slider, so that I know how close I am to being critted and making another character, which happens to me very often. And then it has all of your other stuff. It has your defenses. It has your skills over here, and your spells and your other special abilities. So convenient. And all that.
Indeed.
Yeah, Hero Lab's great for that.
All right. So I've asked people in the chat if they have some Q&A questions to shoot us away. As we're waiting to see if some folks have some questions there, I know when we were having some technical difficulties, Ianara and Patrick were talking about about a game they're playing and the characters they're making for that. So I wanted to just ask everybody here, what's a character that you are either playing or have played and really enjoyed that you can talk about just real briefly?
For the campaign that Ianara and I are part of, I'm really excited. I have a dwarf tiefling druid, and yeah, he's a ton of fun. Literally when he turns into a bear.
Ianara, you're saying something about a dueling cape?
Yes, because I am going to be playing a ratfolk swashbuckler that will
Nice.
be up front in the front lines with Patrick's druid, since we are the only frontliners in that large person party. I think there's like 5 of us, and
Yeah.
we're the only ones at the front. So that's gonna be fun. I will probably hide behind the transformed druid many of the times.
What did you call your character though, Ianara? You have to tell the joke that you said to us in the chat.
No, I didn't go with that one. I went with a different one. I think my character is called Shara Q Terry right now.
Okay. Oh, no.
It's a deep level pun. I'll tell you that much.
It matches what we have going on over here. I remember I played a druid for the Pathfinder playtest right before the playtest was announced at all, and I played my druid Petrichor, who is an elf, and the only idea I had going in is, you know how elves are elegant and have unlimited conditioner? I want the opposite of that. So this was a druid who like cast Tanglefoot by the art for the herbalist and the APG.
Yeah, one of the things we did for the sample characters in the APG and in the core rulebook was kind of ask people around the office to send us their characters, and then the ones we could fit in, we did that. We are getting some questions from is, can you roll your ability scores in second edition? The core rulebook does give that as a side option. It isn't quite as direct because you have to do a option in there kind of as a variant rule. We also got the question, what is each of your favorite new character option in the APG? I feel like we got some hints of that just now with your character descriptions, but let's go around the table. Let's start with Patrick.
Character options. Let's see. I love the versatile heritage, the tiefling, Duskwalker, Dampier, Changeling. They're all super cool. And
cool. Inara?
I have mentioned it. I really like the Swashbuckler. I can't wait to play it. I am also mildly excited for Investigator if I ever get to play a campaign that would require such a expert of investigating things.
So many skills.
So many skills.
I like the addition of the archetypes in general, but I especially want to just put weapon improviser on everything. I want to be a fighter and I want to hit people with stools and ladders and that